Welcome on this webinar organized in the frame of European Defence Challenge. This is already third edition of the challenge organized by the Assets Plus Consortium as a part of Pact for Skill initiative. This time, Rzeszów University of Technology is organizer of the challenge. My name is Dorota Stadnicka and I have the pleasure to work in this university. Today we host speakers from SAFRAN, Polish Space Agency, Rolls-Royce, and GCAN, French Maritime Industry Group. The main topic of the webinar is strictly related to the topic of the challenge, and it is security, threats identification, and defense strategies. So I would like to welcome very warmly Jean-Luc Migot from SAFRAN. Hello, Jean-Luc.
Good morning to all followers.
Our other presenter for today will be Colin Toplink. Good morning, Colin.
Good morning, Dorota. Good morning, everyone.
Hi. We have also with us Colonel Marcin Mazur. Good morning, Marcin.
Good morning, everyone.
And we have Melanie, who you cannot see the Melanie yet. She will join. Yes, we can see. Good morning, Melanie. Melanie Veron-Furgas from GCAN. Good morning, Melanie. We start from the first presentation from our first speaker, Jean-Luc Migot. Jean-Luc is a graduate of the Art of Métier and Supélec, a French high school, who has led numerous research and development projects for French and international defense industry for more than 20 years at SAFRAN Electronic and Defense. Today, he leads the development of training programs in the operational excellence domain within SAFRAN University for all R&T and R&D sectors of SAFRAN Group, including cybersecurity domain. Jean-Luc will talk about threats from aerospace industry point of view. So, Jean-Luc, this is your time. The floor is yours. You can share your screen.
So I think that you can all see my screen now.
Yes.
Okay. So good morning to everyone. So thank you very much, Dorota, for my presentation. And perhaps as you see behind my screen, I really worked for the military industry during the last year. And now effectively, I am at the heading of R&D training programs. So I will try during this presentation to give you some words about aviation and cybersecurity for this European Defence Challenge. And if you want, perhaps let me start with a small research about the web. You see at the beginning of December, I've made just a small research over the web with these three words: aviation, cyber, and security. And as you see, this is a famous search because there is more than 71 billion of results when we make this search in Google US. But you have to know that there is a buzz on the airplanes, but the most issues are mostly on the ground system. As an example here, you can see that some years before, at the beginning of the car development industry, there were some acts of the car, and as you see, some hackers can cut the brakes, shut down the engine, drive off the road and make all the electronics go haywire. So this is at the moment for the aviation also a way to be protected. And as you see on this presentation also, there were some Boeing exercise on the 757 to test the system also at the beginning of the equipment development in the aircraft industry. So you can say that according to the threats to aviation, cybersecurity is really a vector, and we can summarize that in the past there were limited connectivity of aircrafts, and really the network was segmented, and most of the security measures were already in place. But as you can see the trends at the moment, that there is a generalization of the use of electronics and embedded computing in most of the industry and also in aviation. And there is a real desire to connect equipment, as an example, remote maintenance, data economy, and in-flight entertainment. You can also see that there is a growing alignment with the classic IT standards, and perhaps we can also consider that there is an omnipresent threats according to terrorist, state, mafia, activists, and payfor. So, but you have to know that there is a really strong culture of certification, of safety, and a growing culture of cybersecurity. You know probably that there is a lot of European regulation encompassing cybersecurity and airworthiness, and most of the regulation have been put in place to increase cybersecurity of aeronautic providers, whose name is Part ES. Just let me show you that according to an aircraft, there is a lot of link that can communicate with an aircraft, not only the satellites, but also the in-flight aircraft's information, the air traffic control information, the link with the airports, the weather forecast, and sure, the maintenance centers also. I just give you, you have to know that all this connection can be seen as possible doors, breaches for attackers, but critical equipment are really protected thanks to security activities we will talk about in some slides. And I just give you an example about the Boeing 787 antennas. As you see, on an aircraft, there are more than 10 links that can communicate with an aircraft. So there is really capability to be connected to an airplane, and this will be the same for an helicopter, sure. So the point of view, if we look about attack defense, is it an unbalanced context? As attackers' point of view, we can say that we can find high-performance tools as widely available. Development communities are on sharing on networks, and the villainous threat as the means to industrialize the supply of attack tools. The hackers mostly enjoy almost total impunity, and this is a piece of evidence are scarce. So deception is permanent, and the real source of attack also, and operations are carried out from a broad jurisdiction most of the time. So if we look over defenders, you can see that practical and theoretical complexity of security, really a completely safe system does not exist, whatever is the industry, and the inherent complexity of a system is antagonist to security. So the studying about this have to go more in details. And security is only one of the performance of the systems, and you have to know that security is a performance that is difficult to define and qualify. So this is why we have a lot of regulation to this goal. And to here is human. So users, designers, administrators are human, and we have to be trained to this. So the final level of confidence obtained depends most on the rigor put into the application of the method. So perhaps I will try to be more pedagogic and perhaps to define some words. First, what is security? What is cybersecurity? A definition could be say like this: cybersecurity is means, methods, and controls for the protections of assets against threats resulting from attacks or digital attacks. But in this definition, what is an asset for the industry? So we can define that an asset is any data, device, or other component of the environment that supports information-related activities. So asset generally includes hardwares. We can say example of server or switches, software, mission critical application and support system as an example, and sure, confidential information. And as you see, an asset is really sensitive to logical attacks, but also not logical, also physical attacks on its supporting assets, and should be really protected from illicit access, use, disclosure, alteration, destruction, and/or theft, and so resulting in loss to the organization. So how could we define a threat? So a threat could be a potential hazard that can impact one or more asset security criteria, as shown below. So we can talk about confidentiality, we can talk about integrity, but also we can talk about availability. So one way to remember about this is the CA for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So according to this, how it works, a digital attack. Usually an attack will exploit a vulnerability or a failure of security, and it will result in more threats on one or more assets, giving some impacts to the systems, to the equipment. So this has to be taken into account during all development and all protection. So how can we engage asset protection? So we will involve implementing of security controls, and security controls first is technical controls about all the technology who will have to be used into the systems and into the equipment. But not only the technical point of view, you will have also to be well organized for the controls about all organization for the life cycle of the products. For technical controls, we will have architectures providing security functions. We will have, sure, hardware security function and software security function, but also sometimes mechanical one. So for the organization control, we could have security maintenance, surveillance for systems, for premises, for implantation and center of industry. And sure, we will have also a lot of procedures in case of attack or accident, and especially sometimes for a recovery approach. So just have to know that we have in Europe an ISO standard about this, and whose name is around the risk of management global approach. And as you see, the 27001 standard describe an approach that will give some information about the requirement for the implementation of an information security management system, whose name is ISMS. So we will identify all the security controls, and we will base this on the PDCA principle, as you see the Deming wheels, for all the analysis we will done about all the goals of cybersecurity. So usually we do not, if we want to give some definition also to CAA, so you see here that confidentiality can be defined like this. This is the reserved nature of an information or treatments whose access is limited to entities that are known to need to know it for the purpose of their activity. And integrity would be the state of data which during processing, storage or transmission does not undergo any accidental or alteration or destruction and retains a format for their use. Availability could be property that information is accessible and usable on demand by authorized entity. But there is other criteria that can be added to this approach, and we could also talk about traceability or proof, authentication, non-repudiation, and privacy. So for all of this, during the risk analysis, we will use some criterion that must be defined according to grid or numeric grid. I just given you an example we could have of this grid, as you see, with several levels that will go to low to top definition for integrity and availability, and for confidentiality from public to privacy definitions. So I will not go more in details to this, but just have to know that there is some grids like this that we will adapt to the industry to make a quotation of the analysis of this view of security. But you know, cyber is everywhere, and just remember you that each product life phase have to deal with threats and cyber security protection. First, sure, we will have during the product development, the pre-sales and R&D, or development standard that will have to be protected, but not only, because during manufacturing and production, or the setup and configuration, we will have to deal with secret and sensitive data management. Physical hardening will have to be used for this, sure. And during operation, during the use of the system or operation in line with security users guide will have to be used also. But during the life, we will have also to protect or repair update. And you see that all the bench or all the environment of the repair in the line, we will have to use physical hardening. And so it's important to know that even in this phase, we will have secrets and sensitive data management according to the repair and maintenance. So we will have to deal with closure of interface, but also at the end of the use of a system, the destruction of the secrets when disposal or destruction of the systems. So this is all the current life that the protection have to be put in place. So it's very important. And if we talk about the assets aeronautical product, we can have a multi-side approach. The first one is really the hardened product we will have for services, for softwares, for material, for PCB, for bench, electronics, and so on. This is the equipment protection. But we will have also all the physical infrastructure and secure IT and industrial research to be done. Not only because all industrial sites protection will contribute to this and to the global protection, manufacturing, development, and so on. Then the people are very important, and this is the reason for which we should have training and the well behavior of all the persons in a company. So every stakeholders and also partners. So we will use tools, we will use processes, we will use guidelines, and also capitalize on the best practices around cyber, around the threats we could have over the aviation. I've just put you an example of what would be a path to security during development. And as you see here, I remember you during the specify and design phase, during the implement, the test, validate and operate, survey and maintain phase, all the tests we normally have to do during complete processes of development of cyber security against these threats. So I will not go perhaps too much in detail, but just to remember you that all these point bullets are very important to get into security. So the main threats concerning aviation products could be vulnerabilities in designs. I put you some definition about the CWE, common weakness enumeration we will use. Also the CVE for vulnerability of related to codes we could buy in a system. And as you see, there is also the compromise in the loading, unloading chain during the maintenance to be protected. perhaps the compromise also we could have during production, fabrication, as we say, of this phase to be protected, and compromise could be also occurred during the transport or storage. So all these phases have to be protected, even the product's end of life. So this is very important to have these complete wheels and this complete view up to the persons and the company that will work with us to achieve the development of all our system. So this is very important. So this was for you an overview of all the environment of the aviation threats and cyber and security we could have over our processes development from point of view of SAFRAN.
Thank you very much, Jean-Luc. It was a very interesting presentation. I think that our students can understand better how many problems are related to ensuring the security of aircrafts in the area of not only of manufacturing, but also when the plane is under operation already. Thank you again, Jean-Luc. I would like to ask for questions if somebody from our audience have questions. I cannot see now. Maybe at the end of the of this meeting we will have some questions. Jean-Luc, I have seen that there are many doors that can be used for cyber attacks. I'm sure that there are also many different regulations and standards which help to protect aircraft, especially during operations. Can you say a few words about these standards?
Yes, sure, Dorota. You have to know that the EASA have made a lot of regulations about this for all the partners and industry of aviation. I'm adding some, showing you some reference we have from EASA here. As you see in the Aeronautics, several years before, all the regulation have been adapted not only to the system level, but also to the equipment level. And I make you just a very fast remember of all the standards we are now using into the aviation approach. Some reference you have on this slide about the certification specification that concerns the aircraft. As you see for large aeroplanes, CS25, the CS27 for small rotorcraft, the CS29 for large rotorcraft. So there is a complete view about this, and this has been put in place by Europe for EASA approach for all industrial partners. And just have to know that all is very fine design for all the outcomes. And there is a lot of evolution during the time, because I can remember you that the planning of this, you see, is with evolution each year. There is new standard to be taken into account by the aviation industry up to the last years, when they begin to put more and more electronics in the aircraft, in the aeronef, as we say, and helicopters also, up to today and tomorrow, with some correction, some return of experience to be taken into account. So really, it's very important to have these visions that the Europe, and not only the Europe, the Chinese, the USA, and all standard and regulation are being more and more important to securize aviation development.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this additional explanation. We have question from the chat, but I think that maybe we will answer later this question because it is related probably to all the presentations. Yeah. So let's come back to this question later. Now I would like to give the floor to Colonel Marcin Mazur. Marcin is the Vice President of the Polish Space Agency. POLSA, the agency, is an executive agency of the Polish Ministry of Economic Development and Technology, which support the space industry. Marcin's responsibility is in POLSA is to systematize security and defense activities, in particular development of dual-use capabilities, which may apply for military and civilian applications, such as Earth observation satellite system, satellite communication system, space situational awareness, space surveillance and tracking, and also launching technologies. Marcin will talk about threats in space and challenges in space technologies. So Marcin, the floor is yours.
Dorota, thank you very much. Good morning once again to everyone. Now I'm going to upload my my presentation. I hope it's available at this moment.
We can see.
Okay, excellent. So once again, thank you for very detailed introduction. I will talk about space as I'm representing the space agency, about threats and challenges. Of course, there will be a challenge for me to fit into a 15-minute slot, but I will do my best to talk a bit about the details and show you some examples. So, of course, space, we use space a lot. We use products, data, and services from space. We are actually quite addicted to space capabilities, both from civilian and military side. In practice, we use smartphones with different options, with navigation, with communication. We search information about transportation, weather forecast, and so on. So we use information coming from space on the daily basis. And of course, on the military side, it's quite similar. The military needs information about troops, location of troops, own friendly or adversary troops, or confirmation about targets, consequences of targets, so the battle damage assessments, or just provide orders, instructions to aircrafts or vessels which are out of territory. Just to give you a quick overview or information about assets which are in space. They are located mainly in three orbits. The LEO one, the closest one, which are mainly dedicated for Earth observation, but also for new generation of satellite communication. The great example are the constellation of Starlink, the commercial internet provider. The MEO are dedicated, the medium orbits are dedicated for navigation, for positioning, navigation and timing, which are correctly called. And the MEO are used, or we can say that we have 4 worldwide global navigation system. The most common, of course, the US GPS Navstar, the European Galileo, the Chinese Beidou, and the Russian GLONASS. And finally, the geostationary orbits in the longest distance from Earth are dedicated for traditional heavy satellite communication satellites. They provide a service from one location, since the satellites, the pace of satellites, or the speed of satellites is exactly the same as the pace of Earth rotation. At this within this slide, I would like to highlight that the satellites in space are could be military, governmental, or civilian, commercial. However, very often they are used for 2 or 3 customers. They are just dual use. And what is really important to highlight that when crisis or war starts, there's no very often difference between commercial satellites or military governmental, because the principle is the same. It's just to provide service, not to be. They are, of course, could be dedicated for certain type of customers, but the service which is provided by the assets, and I will give an example later on. From military point of view, or from a NATO point of view, the space domain is split into six pieces. The ISR are the capabilities which provide information for intelligence community, mainly for within imagery intelligence capabilities and signal intelligence community. My background is imagery intelligence, and I'm coming from this community, but the IMINT is the counterpart of civilian Earth observation area. The PNT, which I already mentioned, that which are called navigation system, the SSA, space situation awareness, that's the capabilities which mainly based on which are mainly located on the ground, and which includes radars, telescopes, and lasers. And they provide information about assets, our own position of the assets, our own or adversaries, which overflight over our territory. Of course, the SSA capability includes also sensors which are also space-based. The METOC area. The METOC area, it's quite common to understand, but it also includes space weather, and the threats connected to space weather I will show at the next slide. Early warning is dedicated for missile defense, and SATCOM is commonly understood, I think, by all of us. If we talk about natural threats, these are physical, based on space weather, and effects are mainly generated by solar activity, solar phase, coronal mass ejections, and solar energetic particles, and all these threats are indicated by electromagnetic noise, interference, and energy charged particles that have a negative effect on transmission, on uplink and downlink. It may extremely, of course, it may also damage electronic components which are located on satellites, or causing physical damage to the satellite's surface. If we talk about man-made challenges, we talk about the capabilities which are developed by some nations. They are commonly called anti-satellites capabilities, which includes orbital threats. They are called also RPOs, rendezvous and proximity operations. These capabilities includes jamming, lasers, chemical sprays, or high power microwaves. And all that kind of efforts are developed very often under scientific missions umbrellas. The electronic warfare, they are usually used, the weapons, they are usually used locally on the ground, which influence both uplink and downlink. Directed energy weapons, that's the huge lasers which are located on the ground just to physically destroy or damage assets in space. The last two, kinetic energy weapons and cyberspace, these are two which were actually used within the last year. The kinetic energy weapons includes rockets and missiles used from the ground, and there are 4 nations which confirmed the capability. That's the US, Russia, China, and India. And the latest test of the capability was done by Russia in November last year with use of the noodle system. In effect of that, the attack, the weapon created 1,500 debris on a LEO orbit. So the orbit which is the closest to the Earth. And the cyber attack, that's the attack which was used within the first day of a Russian invasion on Ukraine. In the early morning, the civilian commercial US satellite communication provider Viasat was attacked, and actually the user segment was unable to be used, and that's the proof that there's no difference between civilian and governmental or military capabilities when invasion or crisis wars starts. We can't forget about the civilian challenges, of course. The advantage of miniaturization is understandable, and there are advantages of that. Of course, a smaller technology, the lower price of technology. However, it creates a bigger number of assets in space, and in effect of that, and of course for instance of weapons, which I mentioned before, we have more and more space debris in space, and we can't ignore the number of objects in space, since the speed of objects in space is 27,000 kilometers per hour. So the really tiny objects can damage or destroy satellites in space, and it is already measured. Then there are more than 10,000 objects which are bigger than 10 centimeters in space, but it's estimated that more than objects bigger than 1 centimeter, the number of objects bigger than 1 centimeter is higher than 1 million. And in consequence of number of assets in space, it is really required to have space traffic management implemented, just to provide worldwide regulations and standards like are in airspace. And at the end, I wanted to highlight, to touch a few topics which are connected to our future, the closer or the longer one. It is understandable that the miniaturization and mega constellation process is ongoing, that we have more and more space assets in space. There will be definitely bigger exploration of space with back to moon and moon to Mars under Artemis Accords umbrella. Just to what I wanted to add, that also Polish Space Agency is participated into the program. We can avoid space habitats or any energy or mining from space in future. So just to at the end, I would like to thank you for having a chance to give you an overview about challenges and risk in space. And if there's any questions, I will be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Marcin. I look at the chat. For now, we don't have any questions. However, the presentation was very interesting. Actually, we can see that very important is this space traffic management. Do you know, Marcin, if we do already something to create the regulations related to space traffic management?
Well, under United Nations, there's already meetings giving some inputs from nations or organizations just to implement regulations which can give some guidelines for asset providers, for commercial ones and for the governmental one. Actually, in practice, even the military or the governmental assets are developed or manufactured by the same companies. So it's based on nations, since nations are responsible for assets, countries, according to Chicago Treaty from 1967, that nations take responsibility of the assets in space, and definitely global worldwide regulations are required to have some control and to avoid more damages, right? Because the lifetime of assets is not to change a location and not to use petrol, which is on board of the assets. So the less movements on orbits are required on orbits, the longer the assets are in space.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this additional explanation. So I see that we still have a long way to have the regulations for everybody.
Sure, sure. It's not an easy topic, definitely.
Thank you very much again, Marcin. Let's go now to the to our next speaker, who is Colin Topping. Colin, you are with us, yes. Colin was in the Royal Air Force for 22 years, and the final 5 years in the first UK military network security team. He was also a part of the Airbus team. Currently, Colin is the Cyber Incident Director at Rolls-Royce Aerospace and Defence and undertaking a PhD in University of Bristol on cybersecurity of the supply chain within critical national infrastructures. Today, Colin will talk about threats in cyber from supply chain management point of view, and also about diversity perspectives. So, Colin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dorota. Have you got my slide? Is that up now, my presentation?
Yes, we can see your slides.
Lovely, thank you. Hi everyone, thank you for allowing me to have a speak with you today. And it's to discuss the threats relating to cybersecurity. Now, this is a wide area and can be viewed from multiple perspectives. So today I'm going to focus on two areas. First, I'm going to look at how the supply chain is increasingly used by threat actors to target governments, organisations and also citizens. Then I'm going to focus on lack of diversity within cybersecurity workforce and the ongoing need to promote the industry to a broader demographic. So there you go, brief me there, but already been said. But I do just want to point out that when I say Rolls-Royce, I'm not representing the one that builds the posh cars. We sold that to BMW a long time ago. So we are the fantastic organisation that provides the power systems to civil and military aircraft and to military tanks and naval ships and our nuclear submarine fleet as well. And it was good to see when Jean-Luc pushed that picture of a Boeing 787 on there that I did have a Rolls-Royce engine on it rather than Jean-Luc. We also power the Hitachi trains and the global data centres, a lot of global data centres, as well as leading the consortium to deliver clean nuclear energy through small medium modular reactors. And we're also working on innovation for electronic flight and also using sustainable aviation fuel to support net zero global agenda. So although I'm just promoting what Rolls-Royce do, also from all those things, hopefully you'll understand that we need cybersecurity because there's some threat actors in this world that would be a bit miffed with the types of things we do and who we support. So the problem, as I see it. So the 21st century has seen an exponential increase in digitalization and interconnectivity of computer networks and software applications. And that's been a benefit. It's a benefit to businesses, it's a benefit to users, but it also brings with it an increased areas of compromise to the and vectors of attack. So this is a busy slide of headlines of news articles showing how this attack area extends to the supply chain. Which has been increasingly targeted. So when organisations like Rolls-Royce and SAFRAN bolster their cyber defences, the hackers look to exploit our trust in our supply chain, because by targeting the supplier, they can bring a greater return on investment for the hacker, because all they need to do is compromise a software vendor or website or a service provider, and then they impact multiple customers of that supplier. So I briefly want to discuss because the war in Ukraine, firstly because this is a defence audience, but also because we now are trying to see how the public and private partnerships can actually work collectively to do good. So on the top right hand side of the slide, you'll see that cyber attack hits Ukraine and then spreads internationally. This was NotPetya, and Russia compromised a software company that provided accounting software that most organizations within the Ukraine used. And then Russia, they installed malicious code on this software at source, and then the customers download it during a routine software update. Then in June 2017, Russia activated it, and it affected hundreds, thousands of organizations in the Ukraine, but it was indiscriminate, and it affected global organizations outside of Ukraine's borders as well, such as Maersk. And if you look at the bottom right hand side of the slide, you'll see that report as well. Estimates put the global cost of the NotPetya attack at over $10 billion. During the Ukraine war that we're seeing now, Russia has initially seemed to keep their attacks within the borders of Ukraine, although they have recently targeted NATO by switching their aim to Poland. Might interest some people here, and so watch this space. So deviating from the script somewhat, just to cover the Ukraine war. The current war in Ukraine has seen cyber used by both sides and by their supporters. So the West does not provided any military forces, but it has provided military weapons and military defences, and they've also imposed sanctions against Russia. The exception to this is within cyberspace, where commercial and government actors have directly engaged with Russian attackers. So the pre-war assessments were that cyber attacks would play a significant role in Russia's campaign. This seemed to be validated, and Marcin just talked about it with the attack against the Viasat communication system as the Russian tanks were going across the border. But besides this, and also the deletion of data on hundreds of Ukrainian systems, and also some targeted malware attacks on the country's electronic grid, they've only achieved limited disruption. So we need to know why that is. Ukraine's experience in defending against Russian cyber attacks and has become highly capable of protecting their critical assets. But what we're seeing really is a new form of collective defense. Russia's cyber offensive was determined and still is, but as Jeremy Fleming, who's the head of the UK GCHQ, reported, we've seen arguably the most effective defensive cyber activity in history. So, and this is in part due to Russia, international reinforcements. So foreign governments and cybersecurity companies have invested in building up the Ukraine cyber capacity over the previous years leading into the war. But when the war started, some countries deployed network defense, so the UK Cyber Command did, and the EU deployed cyber rapid response teams as well. But then there was defense that was done remotely. So the UK National Cybersecurity Centre has an Industry 100 cohort, which is subject matter experts from industry. They assisted remotely Ukraine, and the USAID gave funding to allow private sectors to support directly Ukraine. And you'll see at the bottom, there's a list of vendors as well at the bottom of this slide that have directly supported Ukraine and continue to do so. Threat intelligence as well. So government organisations like the US with the FBI and CISA, and also UK and EU organisations and cyber threat intelligence vendors as well have given their information freely to assist Ukraine. I've mentioned capacity building at the beginning. Particularly called out was NATO and the Cooperative Cyber Defence Centre of Excellence that has been supporting and continues to support Ukraine. And the technical robustness, we're looking at things like hardware upgrades that have been donated by organisations and governments, as well as within the cloud. So your standard Microsoft, Google Cloud and AWS have all given freely. I saw a report a couple of weeks ago. So Microsoft have committed to a year, 2023, of direct support to Ukraine, and they've estimated that the total cost of that support up until the end of next year would be about $400 million. So it's not insignificant, the support that public and private sectors have given to Ukraine. So that was just slightly off script, but I thought I ought to cover it for this audience. So with supply chain risk management, the problem was nicely covered really by ENSA recently in an excellent report that assessed cyber attacks and compromises of the supply chain over 18 months. And they found that half the 24 supply chain attacks were attributed to well-known APT, advanced persistent threat groups. So these are groups that are highly organized, highly financed, probably nation state backed on most instances. And of the 24 supply chain attacks, 62% took advantage of customers' trust in their suppliers. So, and I want to briefly look at 3 high-profile supply chain attacks from that report. Really brief, this is going to be. So the trusted network management software. So SolarWinds, you may have heard of this. SolarWinds is a company that supplies management and monitoring software, and their product Orion is the NMS product. In December 2020, it was discovered that Orion had been compromised. And an extensive investigation by Mandiant showed that the attackers had gained access to the SolarWinds network many months ago and had taken its time to understand how to compromise Orion. And then once they had, that malicious software was injected into Orion during the build process. Then the compromised software itself was then downloaded directly by trusted customers, and that was used by the threat actor to gather and steal information from these customers that included government organizations, big multinational organizations as well. This attack was attributed to APT29 group, which is based in Russia. This isn't an anti-Russia thing, this is just happens to be what it is at the minute. The trusted cloud-based cybersecurity service is the next one. So this is Mimecast. One of the services that Mimecast offers is email security services, which require customers to connect securely to Mimecast servers to be able to use their Microsoft 365 accounts. So in effect, they're giving you that assurance that your connection into your email is secure. But in January 2021, it was discovered that attackers had compromised Mimecast. They'd actually done this through the SolarWinds compromise. So it's supplier affecting customer now. After the compromise, the Mimecast issued certificate used by customers to access their Microsoft 365 accounts was able to be accessed by attackers, allowing them to then intercept the network connections and then connect to those users' individual 365 accounts and steal information and business information as well. Again, the attack was attributable to APT 29. And then finally, for this stage, the remote monitoring and management tools. So Kaseya is a software service provider specializing in remote monitoring and management tools. And MSPs, managed service providers, often use Kaseya software, and in turn, they provide these IT services to other clients as well. In January 2021, attackers exploited a zero-code vulnerability in Kaseya's own system. So zero code is there is no patch for it, no one's really aware of it, and the threat actors use this. And it enabled the attackers to remotely execute commands on Kaseya's appliances used by customers. Then Kaseya is able to send updates to these servers, and in July 2021, an update was distributed to clients that executed a code from the attackers. And this malicious code in turn deployed the ransomware attack to the customers being managed by Kaseya. And just overnight, hundreds of organizations globally were compromised by ransomware attack because they used this service provided by Kaseya. So in summary, here are 3 examples where hackers have spent the time to effort to compromise companies that are widely used by organizations and thereby getting the most bang for their buck. So what we're trying to do to negate this, so President Biden pushed out an executive order last year looking to improve the nation's cybersecurity. That involved 3 components. It involved sharing threat information, enhancing software supply chain security, and if you think about the instances we just said, that's essentially where that comes in, and also extending the supply chain responsibilities, and that's beyond the confines of defense contractors, which it normally is at the moment, and going beyond that in the US. And as we go in the US, we're also seeing that globally, lots of standards, lots of policy, and lots of guidance coming out from the UK, from US, from the EU and other European countries as well. But it's time to talk about NIST documents, and I think the EU NIST 2 directive, and maybe the Cyber Resilience Act is for another time, or maybe the end of this workshop. Because with what time I have left, I want to address an issue within the cyber community. And it's with the lack of a diverse workforce and the need really for cybersecurity being increased. There's a growing requirement for people, for more people to enter the industry. And to achieve this, we need to look beyond people that look like me. So the future of technology depends on a diverse workforce, it really does. And more women and people of colour of all genders have entered the field recently, but these groups are still underrepresented in cybersecurity. This may be because of a failure of the education system. It could be due to the stereotypes about the industry that discourages people from entering, or it could be because organisations just need to prioritise equality, diversity and inclusion that little bit more. So diversity of employee brings diversity of thought, and through that allows different perspectives to be considered. And whether that's gender, whether it's age, ethnicity or culture, people from different social, economic and education backgrounds, sexual orientation, and also diverse and disabled and neurodiverse individuals as well. So that they all have a part to play in the future of technology and of cybersecurity as well. Oh, this one always blocks, right? There you go. So the future cybersecurity workforce will come partially from allowing working people to transfer into cyber, but the majority will come from schools and colleges and universities. To support them, there are initiatives like the ones on the screen now to help promote cybersecurity. I've been involved in both the UK Cybersecurity Challenge over a number of years, and now more recently I'm directly involved in the UK NCSC Cyber First programme. So the Cyber NTSC Cyber First programme is proactively promoting cybersecurity opportunities to girls and to women, and the figures on the table on the left demonstrate this. They also provide university bursaries. The statistics again on the right show some progress in this. And I'm quite interested that when it comes to the bursaries, they allow you to take a degree in any topic. So it doesn't have to be a computer science or a cybersecurity degree. It can be any degree, just as long as you've got an interest in cybersecurity. And this again looks to open a diverse cohort of the future cybersecurity practitioners. So university graduates, almost that time, can apply to join industry partners for an 8-week summer programme. And we're doing that within Rolls-Royce. So I took over the support and designed a Rolls-Royce Women in Cyber summer intern programme. And we ran our 2nd cohort this year, and we'll run our 3rd cohort next year. I don't have the time to discuss it in any great detail now, but it shows our interns a variety of cybersecurity roles available, and beyond the geek in the hoodie stereotype and all the other roles in cyber. We also introduced them to inspirational females in STEM roles, and that's both inside and outside of Rolls-Royce as well, just so they get a broad understanding. So that's a quick run through, really, of both the supply chain threats and the need to grow and develop a diverse workforce. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Colin. I have to say that I'm more frightened, even more frightened after your presentation, because threats are everywhere. But I believe that we have also very good specialists who protect us, who protect civilians as well. What I wanted to ask, I can see that we have one question on chat to you, Colin. How do you foresee SATCOM and cyber competencies developing, prevention, defending of shore engines and maritime ports, critical infrastructures? Why Navy?
SATCOM's not my... So yeah, SATCOM's not really my area, but from a cyber perspective, we need to develop our understanding. We need to change the focus away from standard IT and understand the other sectors as well, including SATCOM, but also including operational technology, which comes into critical national infrastructure, and it comes into maritime as well. So there's multiple areas that need to align, and that's from an incident response perspective. So when we run an incident response, we bring in subject matter experts within Rolls-Royce and outside of Rolls-Royce as well, to understand more. So the cybersecurity team can't know everything, and this is where we bring in those subject matter experts as well. So if we have an issue in our techland or manufacturing space, then we bring in people from manufacturing that aren't cybersecurity but are but understand that environment, and we work together. So there's a skills gap there, and that's where competencies need to improve as well, to understand those as we go forward for smart cities as well, and automation of vehicles. All these future technologies aligned with also legacy technologies. Yeah, they all need to be managed and understood and risk managed in the same way, but with different skills.
Thank you very much. I hope that this answer is enough for the person who asked the question. I have also a question related to the women in cyber. Do you have some more information? Maybe you could put on the chat link to some more information about this program, because this is very interesting, and it would be nice to see how many women are involving in this program. I personally I know some women who work under cybersecurity, probably attending also this meeting, but we would like to read maybe something more about the Rolls-Royce program, if you don't mind to put a link to more information.
Yeah, sure. I can probably have a separate discussion if you want around specifically what we do within Rolls-Royce, because there's nothing really on paper, but we can talk about it. I'm happy to do that. I could put a link on about Cyber First and then what they're doing, but that's UK centric. There's also a Women in Cyber group that I think is more international, so I'll seek that out and I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. We had the presentation related to aerospace, cyberspace, space, and now we are going to maritime industry. So I would like to invite Melanie. Melanie graduated in European governance. She is the European policy manager at GCAN, and representing and defending the interest of the French shipyards and equipment manufacturers towards EU stakeholders. She especially deals with competitiveness issue, European defense development, and access to skills. I'm very pleased that you are here, and I'm happy to have the chance to hear something about threats in maritime industry. Melanie, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you, Dorota. First of all, I hope there is not too much background noises because I'm on a business trip and have to do this webinar presentation from a cafe. So would you also be able to share my presentation?
Okay.
Because
yes, of course. You have to. You cannot share. Okay, so I can.
I can't have it cleanly done.
Okay, I will share your presentation.
Thank you.
Let me know if you can see and tell me when I should switch the slides.
Thank you very much. And you can go on to the third slide, maybe. Third or fourth. I'm going to start quickly with the presentation of GCAN because what we are doing is we represent, we are the professional chamber representative of the shipyards and equipment manufacturers. So we really do the entire value chain. We do the shipyards, system operators, equipment manufacturers, suppliers, design offices, and ecosystem and partners of all that. Next slide, please. Our sectors really is broad and presents many SMEs, a little part of big groups, but really it's an innovative sectors that is very innovative. And we are doing as well military and civil shipbuilding. I will come back to that later, but really we are a dual industry. And we are interconnected. Civil shipyards are also helping naval shipyards to build products, and they rely on each other's. Can you go on to the next, please? And next. Yeah, some key figures. So, well, you will maybe have the presentation by the end, mostly. You can go to the next, Dorota. Yes, so that's the employment figures. We present almost half, like 50,000 direct jobs in every regions of France. Next slide. And specifically GCAN for the naval sector, we are doing policy monitoring and interest promotion and advocacy to the French administration and to the European ones. We are a place to network for the industry and all our members, and we are facilitating information and contact, especially for the European Defence Fund. And we are organizing a fair every 2 years. It's called Euronaval, and it happens last October. So next edition in 3 years. And you can go to the main one. As I did say earlier on, we are dual industry. So most of our members, like 3/4 of them, actually are doing civil and military activities. And the main current example of interoperability is the construction of the new aircraft carrier in France, where it's built by Naval Group in collaboration with Chantier de l'Atlantique, which is mostly known to be civil shipyards. So we can come up to the challenges now that you have a bit clearer idea of what the industry is looking at. We have 3 main challenges. We go on to the next. And again, I'm gonna skip that one. We have 3 main challenges, which namely are competitiveness, technological challenges, and access to skills. First, on competitiveness, what is important to know is that both civil and military yards have divided themselves by 2 in the last 20 years, and we are facing huge and strong competition from China and the US. For example, a few numbers: China is doing the equivalent of the gross tonnage of the French Navy every 3 years. So every 3 years, basically, it can reproduce what the French Navy, the entire equipment of the French Navy. China can release a frigate from shipyard every 3 months, which is increasingly rapid. And it already has 3 aircraft carriers, when in France we only have 1. And this aircraft carrier really has a technology that is equivalent to the US and the French technology. So it's really advanced and sophisticated. On the counterpart, the US is a self-reliant market with domestic products for domestic demands, and therefore, unlike the European one, it can rely on itself and can envision in the future, and it can plan about the future and evolutions and everything like this. Therefore, for Europe, it's really important to consider that we need our shipyards and we need shipbuilding for our strategic autonomy, and European cooperation is strongly recommended, long but also short terms. We have to be able to provide the European member states with the equipment that they actually need, and this is a huge amount of them. We need to have the capacity to produce submarines, but also ships and vessels for the dissuasion dimension of the war. We also need to be able to produce vessels for the capacity to attack and not only to defend ourselves, but also to provide function of surveillance, protection of communications, to protect the economic interest of the EU. And for that, we need like the capacity to produce a lot of different types of vessels. So I did skip a few slides, but Dorota, if you can pass to slide number 18, no, 19. Yes,
this one?
Perfect. Thank you. This one, perfect. Thank you. The other challenges is the technological challenges. We are seeing a huge trends in dronizations with the logic of demultiplications between inhabited vessels and autonomous means. Those are they are increasing, especially in important areas such as mine wars, knowledge of the environment like hydrography, oceanography, and board aeronautic drones to replace helicopters, but also the creation of surface drones, especially since the Ukraine war. We are seeing them more and more, but also we are seeing more and more submarine drones. There is also the notion of collaborative combat, which is the successor of the network notion. So it's the ability for every type of part of the army to combat in multi-fields and multi-area, to be interoperable between the army, the navy, and the air forces, but also in between European forces. What else? So all those technology challenges are meant to reinforce the resilience of the vessels and be able to have stronger, because the fights at sea are getting stronger and more violent, and we need more resilience. So really, this technology are meant to develop on the resilience and the survivability side. And it's mostly done also with new design solutions. There is, for example, the new type of repetitions of energy on board of the vessel. So a part can be broken and the vessels can still be functional. And all that. This is really important element to take care. And finally, our third challenges. Next slide, please. is the job training and the access to skills issue. I had to put them because it's an Asset Plus projects webinar, so it's always good to remember. It's really the simple consideration that we are having less and less formations relating to skills, less and less formations for people to actually become workers, and yeah, and there is a huge increase of hiring in the industry, so there is more and more competitions in between industries, and shipbuilding is struggling to make itself pretty and be attractive, if I may say so. So yeah, maybe I can conclude. Really in summary, shipbuilding is essential for the European strategic autonomy. We need to keep in mind that most of the vessels nowadays are built by Chinese, and the commercial shipbuilding, the commercial vessels built by Chinese shipyards are at any time able to be recalled by the states and become military vessels. They have a dual conceptions, and because we are so reliant on the maritime transport in Europe, it is important to rely on ourselves for our defense, but also for our commercial trade, and therefore to consider shipbuilding as a strategic industry. Yeah, and that was the end of the word of the end.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Melanie. This is a little different point of view, but we come to the same conclusion that we need skilled people to work on modern technologies to improve the industry and the possibility of development. I have to check if we have questions from our audience to you. I don't see for now, so maybe in the meantime I have the power to change the slides, so I go back to this one. Okay. Because I'm wondering why we don't have here USA.
So as I said, really because it's the exportations, the ability to export, and the US is really producing domestic demands. So there is a huge demand from their government and states, and therefore the US shipyards are mostly and almost only producing for their domestic governments.
We not in EU. We are producing also for outside.
Yeah, in EU we are also producing for exportation purposes a tiny bit, and also for government demand, but the EU government demand and domestic demand is nothing compared to the US demands.
Okay, thank you for this additional explanation. I see that we have no other questions to you, so thank you very much, Melanie.
Thank you very much, Dorota.
And I see that we have one question to Marcin, which we didn't ask yet. Marcin, are you here still with us?
Yes, I'm still available.
Probably you have seen this question already. Specifically on SATCOM, how would you foresee the EU plans for LEO constellation and automation based on military band?
You can. The question I didn't get it because it was so long.
Yeah, you can check on the chat. Do you
okay.
see? Yes, there is a question on the chat. EU plans for LEO constellations and automation based on military band when we are talking about SATCOM.
I would answer this question that if we talk about military plans, we can say that each nation develop own capabilities for its own priorities or plans, and in sharing within NATO. If we talk about EU and the GovSatcom plan, which is going to be implemented within and 2024, it will be a kind of a pool with different capabilities and options which the members will share within EU. But there's no specific plan for LEO. I didn't mention that during my presentation, but the LEO is always the option when you have the geostationary SATCOM capabilities, since if you want to have access to LEO SATCOM capability, you have to have plenty of satellites on LEO, since they are orbiting all the time, or you have to have access to commercial provider which have thousands or hundreds of satellites on LEO. So if we talk about option for nations to have access to satellite communication, we have to focus mainly on the first priority, which needs to be on geostationary orbit as a option for big area cover. But then the second priority could be the LEO. I hope I answered to this question.
I don't see any comments on chat, so I guess so. Thank you very much, Marcin. I see that I see a hand of, I cannot read the name, Titita?
Tilița Themistius George.
Okay,
hello.
so please ask your question.
Yes, my name is Tilița Themistius George. I study ethics of AI at the Faculty of Political Sciences, University of Bucharest, Romania. My question is a more general one, focused mainly on the decreasing human factor. It is still there for now in almost every security and strategical sector, and the increment of automation. We have self-driving cars, also unmanned aircraft system. Only in 2020, we had 4.3 million unmanned aircraft systems sold worldwide. Since the future will be a future of AI-driven spacecrafts and aircrafts, what are the risks when you remove human presence from let's say a commercial plane or a commercial spacecraft, since human presence, it was like a fail-safe or redundancy system for the total automation. Since this absolute automation will have risk and vulnerabilities we cannot yet fathom.
This is a question specifically to one speaker, or all can answer?
All can answer.
Okay, so who would like to answer?
Yes, perhaps I can give some view about this, because as I show in my presentation, you have seen that perhaps some years before the approach of cyber and security was a system approach, but more and more the equipments have to be protected. And as you see, the regulation about this require a special certification approach to be sure that all the risks will be taken into account at the beginning of the studies we are doing. And sometimes we are using also new techniques to deal with this, with artificial intelligence analysis and cyber security products that will be well known more in detail. So it's always an analysis of defenders and attackants to be sure that all will be protected, and even if some risks occurs, to be sure that the good decision will be taken not only by the system but the human that are in control of this. So the regulation and the studies we are doing and the skills we have in the industry is not only to have a global view, but a really detailed view about all the stakeholders that are going into this approach of the industry. So this is for the Navy, this is for the satellites, this is for the aviation, for the train, for all the transport, but also for the communication. And it's really the reason for which the skills, not only in Europe, but in the world, has to be at the good levels from the student parts. And you can see also there are more and more high schools with a security option to be studied at the beginning. Then after, it's also a question of return of experience about this subject, probably, because each time there is new technology, there is sure new solutions, but there is also new way of attack. So we have to be at the good level each time and taking the good opportunities to be at the good levels, to be sure that everything is protected.
So the answer is enough, or we should ask another presenters to add something else?
It's enough. It's enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have maybe any other questions? I'm asking to our audience. I cannot see. We don't have actually more time, although if we have more questions, probably we would find the time. So thank you very much again, all our presenters, for very interesting presentations and this nice discussion. Thank you, participants, for being here with us. For your information, our students already submitted their one-page proposals for European Defence Challenge. We were submissions from different European countries. Now the proposals are under review process, and before Christmas, students will be informed about who passed to the second stage of the challenge. I wish all the students good luck. And we are waiting for the reviews from our experts. Thank you again, and we will see each other, I hope, maybe earlier or in March, when we will talk about our winners. So thank you very much. Have a nice day and see you next time.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Dorota.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.